Okay, so how many went to the open source conference down at UVU? Did anyone attend my presentations? All right. So I present on open source virtualization, specifically on Red Hat's new initiatives with virtualization. Just to introduce myself, though, I'm an open source solutions architect for Cirrus Computer Solutions. Cirrus is a nationwide value-added reseller. We're a premier partner with Red Hat. Don't mind sales spiel. So, but if you guys have any questions or need it, or if your company's ever needed any services, feel free to reach out to me. I can give you my business card at the end of this. So, Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization and the oVirt project. So the oVirt project is essentially what Fedora is to Red Hat Enterprise Linux. It's just basically the management piece for KVM. So right now, this is what we're seeing in the market. Right now, the majority of the market is on VMware, and their customers are now looking for a second hypervisor. And I really think the answer is in open source, specifically with Red Hat solution and the oVirt project. We probably all know what's driving virtualization, cost reduction. That's kind of being negated with VRAM entitlements and all that. How many here are using VMware? So, give you a quick history on Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization. So before it became an open source project, it was just a closed source project, something rare for Red Hat, but it was part of an acquisition that Red Hat made in, I believe, 2007, and that's where KVM came from. KVM was developed by an Israeli company called Kubernetes, and Red Hat acquired them and open sourced KVM and open sourced the management tool, eventually open sourced the management tools. And now KVM is built into the Linux kernel. So if you're running, I believe it's 2.6.21 above, you have KVM. You can start starting up virtual machines. But the original architecture, the management server ran on Windows. It was a .NET application, you know, kind of not exactly what you'd expect from Red Hat. This is what it's changed to. Red Hat released Rev earlier this year, Rev 3.0 earlier this year. It's now based, oVirt is obviously based on Fedora. The current version is based on Fedora 17. So you have Red Hat Enterprise Linux running the management. Then you have your nodes, but they either call them an oVirt node, or if you're talking the Red Hat speak, Rev H or Rev hypervisor. Postgres backend now supports we can now run it. It used to be a part and embedded on Red Hat Enterprise Linux, but now you can run it as on a separate Postgres server group. And they only support Postgres. They're not going to support MySQL. It will not support Oracle. There is still support for Microsoft SQL, if anyone cares about that. So basically how I explain the way the development works. You have the oVirt project, the Fedora project, all goes into Red Hat. The current version of Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, a hypervisor runs on Rev 6.2. You have SE Linux with oVirt. I'll get into what oVirt is in a later slide. I also have a demo since I actually have working Wi-Fi here. I didn't at the conference. Basically, what I just was explaining, what runs on top of it. And then oVirt, it's Fedora, replace Fedora with Rev. So, oVirt is ahead of Rev right now. We have 3. I'll get into the differences between 3.0 and 3.1. They're actually quite similar.
So if you're running CentOS, for example, with that stuff,
you can build packages for it.
So you'd have to build it separately?
Yeah, there's source RPMs on oVirt.org.
Okay.
You can just build the RPMs on that.
Okay.
So what does it support right now? Translate rel, like if you're running CentOS to Cent, it will run CentOS just fine. Or Cent Linux. Oracle Linux if a rocket you over the head. But in Windows 7, Windows XP, 2008, so the basics. And then the scalability. These numbers are higher now. It's now 128 vCPUs and 2 terabytes of virtual memory. So it's huge scalability. These are 3.0 numbers. 3.1 brought up the scalability basically to no limit for virtual machine scalability, for scaling up. So I thought this was really interesting. InfoWorld did a shootout last year, and it just shows you where Red Hat was in comparison to VMware. They were very close in terms of management, very close in terms of performance, but now I think Red Hat would probably get all 9s right alongside, right with you. And the performance, the red is Red Hat, the gray, if you can see it, that's VMware. Red Hat beats the crap out of VMware performance. Then security, and this is what I think is really cool. It sets up, so oVirt is based on SE Linux. I know most of you probably shut SE Linux off. It's required for you to run on your hypervisor. You have to run SE Linux on your hypervisor. Why would you want to do that anyway? Well, one, the oVirt node gives you really no choice because it's basically a read-only image. And just it's a 100 meg image, but you don't really want to touch it anyway. The only thing you can modify on it is the network and register it to the management suite. But the security, well, basically it isolates your guests. So if your Windows guests get attacked and they start doing anything suspicious, it doesn't let it do it.
So that's so you're saying, so oVirt is an actual, like
It's
basically
it's the management. And this is oVirt.
Oh,
This is oVirt.
okay. But it's actually the operating system.
This is part of SE Linux.
You install that on.
Mm-hmm. Now SE Linux runs on the hypervisor.
Right.
It isolates your guests from one another.
Right. You're talking about a 100 meg image that you run.
So
is that the actual operating system, or is that?
Let me go back to the architecture. Probably skipped ahead myself. So this even applies to the 3.31. So you'll have your hypervisors. So you could either run a full-blown Red Hat Enterprise Linux or Fedora or CentOS, full packages and all, or you can use the oVirt node or the RevH, which is 100 megs on your hosts. Right now, the management piece has to run on a dedicated server. Cannot run virtualized. That's changing. Probably in 4.0, but it's not going to be in 3. So I'm gonna do the demo towards the end, but this is what the management looks like. Looks familiar to use vCenter. It really looks very similar to vCenter. Then part of the suite is a power user portal, or user portal. Basically, it's for the broker for the SPICE protocol. Anyone heard of SPICE? Which one? So SPICE is what Red Hat's using for desktop virtualization for basically it's similar to HDX or ICA or PC over IP. So you can run, basically right now it's a Mozilla plugin on Linux and an ActiveX plugin on Windows, and there's a client coming from Mac, Tech Preview in 3.1. So with the Spice, you can run 720p video. You can't really do that with HDX or ICA. So it's really powerful. It's a really powerful display protocol. And it now handles USB redirection too, natively. This is what the power user portal looks like, and I'll show you all this. I think this is really cool. You don't get this with any other virtualization solution. You have to buy it. So this is like so if you have developers, if you're a system admin, you have developers that need access to their machine, you can have them have a self-service portal. So you don't have to mess with it. Probably useful for the developers. So you don't have to buy the system admin. So when it's said, it's just enough Linux to run virtual machines. It's all in with KVM, you have to run have your CPU speed until VT or EMD.
So in this case, you're saying it's just enough Linux to run virtual machines. So this is a headless box.
Yes.
So it's just serving as host
and you can,
for how many
when
guests?
you go to the you can SSH to it, but you can't. There's no
X,
no X,
no graph
nothing.
at all. It's just
it's 100. It's actually a little less than 100 megs. So there's obviously no X.
yeah.
There's just SSH and enough all the packages it needs for iSCSI and for fiber support in NFS. NFS is built into the complex, so it doesn't matter. So Rev 3.1 or oVirt 3.1.
Does it assume that you have, like, are you required with the hypervisor, the standalone hypervisor, do you need to have separate, network storage?
So you can use a local storage if you wanted to, but best practices, specifically for the live migration, you'd want network attached storage.
And supposedly with KVM you can do live migration without.
You can't do it without. You can't.
It's slow, but
it's slow. There is in 3.1. One of the things that I don't think I listed in the feature list. There is the ability to use any POSIX compliant file system as a data store. You can live migrate. So if you decided to use a clustered file system like Gluster or GFS2, it would actually live migrate, and it's actually really fast. I don't have that set up. I still have 3.0 in my lab. So. But right now, 3.1 good. Right now, 3.1 is completely open source. We're switching to the OpenJDK, dropping Oracle JDK. So that's already there if you're going to use oVirt 3.1. JBoss, it's actually getting, oVirt uses JBoss 7. Red Hat's obviously going to use the latest and greatest enterprise edition of JBoss. Jasper, you use Jasper reports. That comes bundled with Rev or oVirt. Quotas, that's a big thing. You can now restrict users to quotas.
With Jasper, don't you need to buy a license?
No.
No?
No, Red Hat has an agreement with them, and they actually use the open
there's an open source.
And there's an open source solution that they put out, and that's what's bundled with oVirt. But for Red Hat Enterprise Virtualization, there's an agreement.
And they've got your own little reporting
then you can build your own reports. You can, and I can show you too.
Yeah, we looked at it with BI.
The quotas you said per user, now that's per user on the management?
On the management, so
So you can say this developer could have up to this.
up to 2 CPUs and 4 gigs of memory, or unlimited quota. Right now, it's unlimited quota in Rev 3.0. And then Linux command line, there will be a PowerShell command line tool set, Python SDK, and then there's a REST API as well. It's actually a really powerful SDK and API. So right now in 3.0, there's still a dependency on Internet Explorer. 3.1 removes that. So if you guys go out and play with it, you won't need to use Internet Explorer. Unfortunately, when I show you the demo, I have to use IE. Snapshots, that's another big one. You can't do live snapshots in 3.0, you can in 3.1. Hot plug disk, direct LUN, so you can directly attach an iSCSI LUN or a fiber LUN to a virtual machine in the UI. You don't have to do it over inside the VMware. It's something very similar to this. You do shared disk, you could just, instead of, again, direct attach disk storage, you can use a virtual disk. You can dynamically grow and shrink it far more easily than you could at a traditional one. And then storage live migration, if anyone, this is a feature in VMware that only comes with Enterprise Plus. So a lot of customers are looking at.
Is that the same as vMotion for?
So there's live migration, which will move an active virtual machine to another host. And then there's storage live migration. And what that does is, block by block, it moves the image to a different data store, and while keeping the virtual machine up. So it takes a snapshot, moves that over, and then it moves over the blocks, the remaining blocks.
That's the storage vMotion.
Very similar to the storage vMotion. Basically storage vMotion. One thing you'll see, the network UI in 3.0 is a mess, but 3.1 is a lot better. I wish I had 3.1 installed. It's actually really nice. Did any of you use Cisco UCS? Cisco UCS integration in 3.1. 3.1 and Rev 3.1 is shipping in December. So if you're interested in support. And then I'll show you the virtual desktop infrastructure. It's not really Red Hat's strong suit. Zen, to be perfectly honest, Zen Desktop, it will be the dominant virtual desktop provider for the foreseeable future. They can have like desktops. The only thing they really can't do is Linux guests. That's it. They just can't do Linux desktops. But most enterprises don't deploy Linux desktops. So this little quick slide, just so you can see if you're using VMware today, this is comparing against VMware Enterprise. Rev for 10 physical hosts, 10K up front, and then your renewals. So it's significantly cheaper. VMware is hugely expensive because of the vRAM entitlements. And then I'm going to go ahead and do my demo.
Give any statistics on performance?
Yep, so we have that all the way back. So SpecVirt, they did. This is KVM against vSphere. These numbers are from the beginning of the year. VMware may have put in their 8-socket numbers, but back then they didn't. Revo dominates in performance on 2, 4, and 8 socket. And VMware might be a close second in 8, just like they are in 4, but actually 4, that's a 4, so actually Rev still kicks them in the face. So, and scalability, it completely outscales VMware, because your limitation for KVM is the Linux kernel. That's your limitation. So here, you theoretically could max out at 4,000 CPUs, max out at 64 terabytes of memory on each host, and then guests, Linux guests, is the same story. Specifically with Linux guests, same story. You could theoretically max out at 4,000 vCPUs and max out at 64 terabytes of VRAM, theoretically. If you do it, I'd love to see it.
Over provision.
And even and with overprovision, that's not even overprovision. That's just dedicated 64 terabytes of memory. That's theoretical. If you get it working, I'd love to see it. But
I need a machine that supports it.
But
You need a credit card.
2 terabytes. Really, like you can load up a machine, 2 terabytes of memory, fully or more. So Red Hat will support 2 terabytes of memory per host with Rev 3.1. They just increase how much they know the theoretical limits. They just increase how much they will support with each new release. And right now it's 128 vCPUs and 2 terabytes of VRAM for guests.
So when you say support, are you saying how much you can do, or when you call them on the phone, whether they'll?
Well, the thing is though, is if you do call them and you happen to have a 4,000 CPU host and it's not working, they actually want to know, because that means there's a viable Linux kernel.
So they don't support it, but they'll help you out anyway?
They'll help you out anyway. Red Hat's really cool about helping their customers. I've had to deal with Red Hat support like every day for the last year. So, with different customers. So I'm going to go and show you this demo. Is it canopy model?
What, the C7 wireless? Is that what you're using?
C7 wireless.
What's a C7 DC guest?
That's probably suck.
That might be cheating the weird or something.
While I'm pulling up my VPN, you guys have any questions so far? Any other questions so far? While I pull up my VPN connection.
Why wouldn't you? It's just fun. I know. Maybe you know. And you're curious. Maybe you tried it on the VM. I don't know. Yeah. watching them people try it. Steve tried it. It was like, I can do it. I'm gonna commit. What you gonna do? He hated it.
Yeah, I just like my own simulations. It's like, yeah, being able to just run things and not have to have all this like, where is it?
Why does it change today? Why do I do a prayer? Does it work?
Oh, you can't do Wi-Fi. What? It's a fact. So it's pretty bad. It's not, you kids in your new fangled. What you who's it? Actually, he's like, well, I know that doesn't make sense to me if I don't exist. It's not exactly why.
Alright, so this is what oVirt or Rev looks like. So I have a variety of virtual machines running. So you can either use VNC or Spice or RDP for Windows guests. The VNC, you can't just remote into it using a traditional VNC client. You have to use the manager. Is what the way it handles the encryption and the password across the internet. So you have to use a manager to do that to VNC into your hosts or to your guests. So the way first it's down to a tree. So it's divided. You're divided. Basically, you have to look at data centers as clusters, and clusters as I don't really know how to put it, but because the reason why is you cannot have multiple, specifically in 3.1 and 3.0, you can only have one type of storage. So you can only use iSCSI, NFS, per data center. So you can have multiple data centers, but it doesn't. You can have the manager supports up to 500 data centers. So it's not really.
So they can be in the same network, just
yeah. So if you have different hosts that need to use fiber or iSCSI, you just have to set up a different data center for those hosts. That's being fixed in board O. It's not good, so it's not anytime soon. So that's from what's on the roadmap.
So you've got 4 clusters?
So right now I have 4 data centers set up. One that's actually functioning. I have them just for demonstration purposes. So create a plug data center, and it's going to use NFS just like the rest of them. And then you add a cluster to it. Tell it what memory optimization you want to use. So this is where overcommit comes in. So they have two options for you to pick from. For desktops or for servers. For servers, they would recommend up to 150% memory overcommit. Desktops 200. But if you wanted to do 200 for your server workloads, you could, if you wanted to. And then the resilience policy. So you can just have it hit if a host goes into a non-operational state. What do you want it to do with the guests that are running on that host? Do you want it to spin them up on another host? Do you want it to do nothing, or do you only want to migrate virtual machines that you've specified that are highly available? I'll show you where that is all in a minute. So if I go into SLC tag and my cluster, really only one functional cluster.
So with the clusters, if you have a VM and you're or the cluster, is that the machines that the VM, like if you're moving it around, it'll stay within that cluster?
Yeah, they can only be within the cluster that you build. You can export it, and I'll get into exporting and all that, and put it into a different cluster.
But can you go across data centers?
No,
Okay. So that's what the difference between data
That's what
center and
X-
cluster.
yeah. But you could, what you could do, you actually, no, you still could, because you could just put it into the export domain. I'll show you what I mean by that. But you would export your virtual machine to the export domain and then attach that domain, that storage domain to that other data center.
So the main thing with clusters is that if you have, like for the auto migration and stuff, it'll just all happen within that cluster.
Yep, exactly. So I'm just going to use this cluster that I know has all the stuff in it. So I have, right now I have my policy set to even distribution. So what that means is when all my VMs are going to be basically spread out across all of my available hosts evenly. So based on their current CPU usage. And it's going to migrate them once it hits that 75% threshold. So if another host, if one of my hosts is spiking on CPU, it'll move those virtual machines to one that's not being spiked, like the not idle ones. It'll move those. So, that. Or I can have a power saving policy. So if my utilization on my host is below 20%, it'll move all the virtual machines to the fewest number of hosts as it can without sacrificing performance. And basically, those hosts go into a power saving mode. A lot of my customers are concerned about power, so that they actually love this feature. So then you can see what hosts are in this view. Your networks, your and permissions, who has what permission to this data center.
Can you go back to the virtual machines now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see everything that's running in that specific cluster.
How do you determine which ones are power strong?
And
So what's the networks? How do you?
so, yeah, if you want to add a network, just give it a name. It's VLAN tag. If it has a VLAN tag. So basically, you have to have your management network, but then I always have a storage network. For best practices, I don't have to set up. This is just a demo environment. It just has to work. I have a storage logical network and public-facing storage network. So all my hosts have at least 4 NICs at the very minimum, because I can have my public NIC also be the management NIC. So, because I always bond. Because you can set up bonding, and I'll show you how it works at the host level.
So when you set up a new network, if you have multiple hosts, and so you need to have tagging set up on your switch so that the
You don't have to use VLANs. You don't have to use VLANs. It's totally optional.
what happens if you don't use VLANs? How does that? Does it just have everything on the same physical network?
Unless you automatically have the network auto-negotiate based on IP address. You don't have to set up tags. So. On the host, so we can see, I'll use this guy. This is where I can configure the network interfaces. So I can VLAN it, I can select multiple mix and then bond them if I wanted to. So if I wanted E3 and E1 to be bonded, it just uses traditional bonding. And you can active backup, load balance. So active backup, okay. That host is active, actually I did put in it as well. So this will be a good way so you can see live migration. So what it's going to do is it's going to move the storage there. So there on each of these, the one host at all time always has to be running what Red Hat calls the storage protocol manager. So that's why it's saying contending, because that's going to be the new storage protocol manager. That's going away in Run 4. I hate it. Save. Now it's bonded to that IP address on that VLAN using bond 4. So just using traditional Linux bonding. So there's nothing special to it. And then I can activate it, back up. It should move one of the virtual machine back to it once it comes back up. May not, though. It's supposed to. So again, permissions, what virtual machines are running on it. General information on the host. This is useful. So you can tell OS, kernel version KVM, this is the broker to the manager, what version of Spice the host is using, CPUs, whether if memory page sharing is on, it automatically turns on when it needs it. What CPU family you're using. I'm going to get into cluster creation. Your cluster has to be, I'll get into that. Physical memory, your swap, and see what swaps we can use. It's a, so we need to go back to the clusters for a second. So I'm going to create a new cluster. So just name it, get memory optimization. I forgot to mention this. So then you need to select a CPU type. Basically, you just want to pick the CPU that is, so say if you have a Westmere Intel CPU, a Westmere based Intel CPU, and then in your cluster and another system with Aeolus. You just need to select Aeolus, and both of those hosts will work in the cluster. Basically, it's just you just can't use certain CPU flags that are and features that are in Westmere. Just basically won't use them.
It's the highest common denominator, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, same goes for AMD. You just gotta pick which generation of AMD processor you're using in this case, it's the lowest common denominator. It's the oldest CPU in your cluster. That's what you gotta use. That way it will live migrate between each other. Otherwise, VMware is very similar. Storage. Storage is easy. So like I said, all these are NFS because this is with a different data center. But all my active ones are NFS. So whenever I want, if I need to create another, if I need another storage domain, I just put in the path. This. Whichever host I want to use, and put in the path for NFS, then it will create all the file structure it needs so you can put virtual machines on it. And it's the same thing. Looks very similar with iSCSI, just has the iSCSI Discover.
What's the performance of NFS versus iSCSI?
On 10 gig, I don't see any difference if you're using a 10 gig network. 1 gig network, there is a difference because I think for whatever reason NFS is just a little slower. It's not much slower, but I don't really see a difference, especially with a 10 gig network.
NFS, you're encapsulating all the block information, and yeah, it's because you put it all close to. Really?
Yeah, I've never really seen a huge performance difference. But at iSCSI, block can be faster, but with the new version of NFS, I don't see any difference. With NFS v4, I really don't see any difference. For my higher performer customers, like for high performance clusters that are using Rev, NFS is always out of the question. We always use fiber. High performance fiber.
So earlier you said on the display that RDP was an option. Is that to the guest itself, or is it?
To the guest.
So you have to have remote desktop enabled inside
Yes.
the device?
Yes.
So it's not like a virtual box where it's just using RDP
No.
to.
So like this system is in my DNF, so it's you'll want to use, if you're going to use RDP, your Windows systems would need to be the exact same. The name of your Windows systems will need to be what it is in DNS or the result. So I'll show you. It's going to pull up virtual desktop.
So does the first
Oh, actually, it did it. Ah, they fixed it. They fixed it. Yeah, Red Hat fixed it in the latest patch. Uses the IP address now. So.
Can you use, does Spice have to, does a guest have to support Spice, or can you use Spice with any guest?
With Windows, there's a driver. Linux is built in. It's actually been built in.
So did it remote to the host?
I don't know the password. So. This is VNC. This is basic VNC. So it works just fine.
Is the ActiveX thing here?
Huh?
The ActiveX you were.
Yeah, I'm using it,
it's
and then the ActiveX plugin's already in. Started up.
So is there a way to get the console of the guest without the cooperation of the guest operating system? So like while it's booting, can you see it?
Yes, you can see it booting.
Can you do that for Windows, or just?
Yes, you can do that for Windows.
So what protocol does it do for that?
I think it initially uses VNC. So I'm going to start up this Windows guest because just if you guys want to see the performance. So this is creating a new guest is very it's pretty straightforward. So you have your templates. Just name it whatever you want. You can put in just 2 today. That works too. And you can out. A lot of my customers are liking this, specifically with Oracle licensing, so they can know exactly how many cores are allocating to Oracle. And the same with JBoss. JBoss is sold by the core, not by the, so if they only want 8 cores, they can just put 8 cores on that system or more. They'll automatically add sockets as it needs it, but sockets are really not relevant. So, and 16 cores to 1 socket, but if I want to get all the way up to 64 cores, I can do that. So I'll 4 cores, operating system select, other Linux. Console is where you select whether it's Spice or VNC. Whenever, I usually just leave it at Spice, but when I first boot, I use VNC because Spice protocol, when it's installing, the mouse behavior is kind of finicky until it's done installing. And you can pick what host you want to run it on. And then if you remember when I mentioned the cluster, how you want guests to be handled if you went and pulled the plug on one of the hosts. So if you picked that you only want to move highly available virtual machines, just make sure that's checked. And if this is like a critical system, and then you could select what priority you want to come up in. So high, medium, low. It just automatically decides how it's going to bring it up. But if you select high, it's going to be one of the first ones in the queue. Because you can only boot so many virtual machines at one time. You'll overload your storage. I don't remember how many IOPS it takes just to boot a desktop, but it takes to boot up if I remember my numbers right, 5 desktops on SAN storage immediately. It takes like 50,000 IOPS just to boot 5 desktops. So it uses like no IOPS at that point. But it's like 10 IOPS, 100 IOPS. Physical memory guaranteed. In 3.1, you can dedicate CPU. So you can actually dedicate a physical CPU or a physical core. But right in 3.0, you can just do memory. And then boot options, what disk. If you have a second device, do you want it to boot off of Pixie Boot, CD-ROM, whatever. And just add your network device. And my disk. Thin provision. 10 gig. And then run. Always select that run once, and then attach CD, Dora. Change it to VNC protocol. Hit OK.
When you selected Touch CD, was that a storage CD?
So I'll show you when you create a data center. Go back.
You can create templates.
So when you create a data center, it's going to ask you to create an ISO storage domain, and that could just be the local storage on the Rev Manager or an NFS share. And that's just where you store all your ISOs.
Okay.
So here's my ISO storage domain, and I have the Rev tools for Windows, satellite, Windows 7, Windows XP. So I wanted to see if Windows 8 worked. So did it work? Yeah. Just uses the Windows 7 drivers. So turn it up door. Let's go. Okay. So bring it up. was just going to bring up the Fedora installer just a minute. So, but anyway, then pools is one. This is generally used for desktops, not for servers, but you can use it for servers. I set up pools for a web server. Basically, I wrote a Python script that used the SDK, the Rev SDK. And what it did is it would add more nodes to the web cluster as it needed, and then shut them down and return them to the cluster, or return them to the pool, and remove them from the cluster. So it's just a big load balanced web cluster. Just have a range of IP addresses that are really load balanced to get the available. But you would use this more for desktops. And like I said, I wouldn't use Red for a virtual desktop solution. It's not quite there yet. But the SPICE protocol's there. I mean, it's much better than HDX when it comes to 3D graphics.
What about the Fedora? Is it still going on?
It is my ISO crash. I don't think that's a complete ISO. I'll show you how the protocol battle. I think it's really cool. Everyone's favorite operating system, I'm sure.
Been fired 1%.
No, I can't. I'm not allowed. It is not liking this dual monitor.
Can you mirror your display,
Yeah.
your preferences?
It's supposed to support dual monitors. I just don't think it can support the resolution on those. I don't think I have the SPICE tools on this one, so that's why it's not working. I'm going to load up the other one. That one I know I do. Any questions so far? Well, while that's loading, I'm just gonna go into something really quick. So this, I don't really have much left, so. What do you guys use for management? This is one of the things I talked about at,
Package management?
package management, configuration management on Linux. What do you guys use? Puppet, Spacewalk, memory. So, if you guys haven't heard, I heard of Spacewalk. If you guys sent, I'm assuming CentOS in here. Spacewalk is an open source project, spacewalk.redhat.com. See what Red Hat calls the upstream of Red Hat Network Satellite. And you can use it for centralized management. Spacewalk is actually better than SATA. I actually tell all my customers use Spacewalk because it's better. Because fewer things are broken in an open source version. So
Shocking.
go for free. So and satellite's 10 grand. So yeah. So save 10 grand, go with spacewalk. Basically complete package management, so you can install and remove packages and search your sync channels. And then configuration management. So if you're using LDAP, for example, you can have a centralized LDAP config file, especially if it's changing. Or if you have any configuration that is constantly changing and needs version control. That has probably been a saving grace for me when I was a system admin. And then system provisioning, that's primarily for bare metal, so it just uses Pixie using Kickstart or Anaconda. And it has a monitoring plugin too. So one-stop shop.
So the system provisioning it doesn't interact with oVirt
No,
to be able to deploy VMs?
I'm going to show you something really cool.
Right.
So that's where CloudForms comes in. That's a Red Hat product. But again, the open source project is better than the downstream. And that's called Catello. Catello is eventually going to replace Spacewalk. It's not quite ready, but but you can do more than just young repos. You can do Maven, Gem. It's meant to be an agnostic platform. It doesn't matter what Linux you use. That's what the whole goal of this project is, for configuration management for any Linux you want to use. And then, this isn't integrated in yet, the configuration management. They'll be using Puppet, basically a version of Puppet. The project's called Foreman. And then system provisioning, again, using Foreman. Not in yet, that's for the bare metal stuff. The virtualization stuff, that's in another project. And that's in the Aeolus project. This allows you to manage images across multiple providers. So, private, Rev, Eucalyptus, vSphere, OpenStack. So, just a centralized place where you can manage images, deploy them really quickly and easily. I'll show you this in a minute. This is, this is a product that I can't sell yet, and I've been evaluating it. And this kicks the crap out of VMware vCloud because it works across all of these platforms. So if you're using EC2, you manage all your images right from one console. And if you have a local cloud system, you can manage the same image. You can use the same image on OpenStack or on vSphere. It's really cool.
And you can migrate between them?
Yeah, that's coming. That's not in the project yet, but eventually you'll be able to make them be cloud aware. Basically, like this system knows that this system's in Amazon, that this system's in VMware, and then
You make it so they can have a virtual network that can talk to each other.
yeah, if you have EC2 configured properly, yes. And then make instances or clumps of instances highly available. So a system in EC2 is your front end for the web, but you have or actually rather, you have OpenStack with an instance that has your company's website on it, and your DR is in EC2. Your EC2 will spin up an instance that's a duplicate of it, and there you go, done.
So, go back for a second. I mean, if you had like an image that was on Rev, or you can share the images. You can make them where. Are they going to be using like something like Box Grinder for that, or
What?
Box Grinder?
I haven't heard of that.
It's essentially to something that the Fedora Cloud SIG is working on, where you can actually take an image that's, once it's in one format, you can convert it from there.
Yeah, that's basically what it does. It may be using that project. I haven't heard of that project.
Well, this does more, isn't Box Grinder doing, so you're talking about like the templates that you're creating?
Yeah.
Stuff, not the actual, you're talking about being
This
able to-
would be more comparable to SUSE Studio. If you guys have heard of SUSE Studio. You guys heard of it? No? Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but this actually plugs into these systems. SUSE Studio does not. SUSE Studio is just where you can build your images and then download them and then deploy them to whatever you want to deploy to. But you can't deploy to Rackspace or Amazon. So.
What?
Welcome to Windows.
No. That was done. Okay.
Do I have a Linux desktop? Now, I'm going to go ahead and just show you guys this stuff. This is much better. Anyway, this is probably really what you guys care about for your jobs. So Patello, I'm going to show you guys Patello because Spacewalk's cool, but Patello's cooler. So, because
How
it's
long,
new
you said Catello isn't quite where it needs to be to,
to replace Spacewalk. Not quite. It's almost there. I would say it's
throw to how they, how soon they expect it to be.
well, they just hit 1.0. It just is missing that configuration piece. It's missing the provisioning for bare metal systems. That's what it's missing right now. So if you had a Red Hat subscription, you could see how many subscriptions are used, how many are over, and all that. So you can go pay Red Hat more money, and then you have your Red Hat subscriptions or custom content repositories, so CentOS. And then you sync those packages down to the system. You want to allocate at least 100 gigs. That's what I allocate to it. And so I have Red Hat, and I have what I call EL6, which is CentOS. And if I go into the content and see what's in there, so if I go to, I'm going to search products, and then I'll do so I'll see that library, or I can search packages. Actually, this is I'll do the updates. Now I want to search for kernel. I want to see all the kernel updates that are in the updates repo. So I have 7 available in that repo, and updates I have 21. If I had any systems attached to this, in the systems I'd be able to look at my individual systems. I just barely reinstalled this today, that's why I don't have any systems in it. But I could click on my system, see what update errata is available for it, push that errata, schedule it to run in at midnight, and it's done. You know, and you walk away. What's cool about this, what Spacewalk doesn't do,
specifically in this, in the content, I'm going to go a bit into the content, actually. System, let's go first. Actually, I better go to this, otherwise this isn't going to make sense. So I'm going to go into the organizations. So in your organizations, you tell your, you have your library, that's where all your packages get stored. Then you can promote it to dev, then promote those packages to test, promote it to QA, promote it to production. You can have as many paths for lifecycle management as you want. You got as many paths as they can be as long as you want. So if you have dev, test, QA, user acceptance testing, and then production, you can have that flow. You just push those packages across the line.
Does a package have to go through both paths, or you choose which one?
You choose which one starts.
Per package?
Per package or per repo. It could just be per repo. So if you just, like if you sync an individual, so say you've standardized on CentOS 6.2, and you're testing 6.3, you can put that in test and promote it to test, and then promote it to QA, and then it will update. You can tell it to automatically update every package. That's in your test environment. Every system in your test environment will then be at 6.3 when you schedule it. QA, same thing. Production, you can schedule a production downtime and push it. And it'll do it all your systems all at once you promote it. It's really, you can't do that in spacewalk. That's one of the big advantages Catella has over spacewalk. Right now, I just use spacewalk for configuration management and for provisioning, and I use this for everything else. I had to reinstall this because I actually wanted to show you guys this. The CloudForm system engine, that's what they branded it, is a hunk of crap. So this actually works. Anyway, you guys have any questions about this? I'm going to show you the Aeolus engine. That's where that provisioning comes in. So that's possible to 6. So I already have an instance launch. It's been there for 19 days, and then I can launch as many instances as I want inside this resource zone. Your resource zone is basically a pool of resources. It can be Amazon, it can be Rev, it can be VMware. Just create a new one. Just say what I want it to be called flood, or quota. Then I can. I gotta go into this big list now. Resource quantities. That's clouds. This is new to me, so just bear with me for a second. Oh, it already has a resource applying to it. Oh, it doesn't have any providers. So yeah, have a provider. That is.
anyway, so if I want to launch another instance, I select the resource node and I select application, and then I have an application blueprint. They call it an application blueprint. What it really is a virtual machine template. You select the one that you want to deploy, give it a name, and I'll select my cluster.
So that's where you can deploy to any, the clusters could be on.
It could be VMware. I don't have VMware host that showed up on, but
Look at the EC2 or.
I've been having problems with Cloud Engine. I've been having problems with this. I don't know why Red Hat released this, because it is not ready. It is not a 1.0. It's more like a 1.5. Because the Aeolus project, wish I would have installed this too, is ahead. So I'll just show you how to bring in a new image. It's not going to work, but so let me go back to Catella. So I have in here a system template, and in that system template, I've already specified what packages I want installed. So I have a CentOS base. So this has the kickstart file I need. It has the appropriate repos I need in order to install everything. It's going to point to Catella here. And then it's not going to show you the packages, but it'll show you the package groups. So I have a base and a web server. Web server, and then I can download this it's an XML file. And again, you can promote system templates, just like you can. That's why that environment's there. It doesn't like this XML for using. I think it's because of the version Catella I'm using. And if I updated to the latest version of Aeolus, it probably would work. I had it was working at one time because I was able to launch this. So I can look at, say I launched it, I can stop it, restart it, get any more information on it, like what storage is it using, if anything. What resource provider, what's its IP address, does it have one assigned because I don't have a DHCP server on my lab. Connection via SSH, and if it had an IP address, I could SSH into it. And then config parameters, if it had any config in this template, that won't come in Telform, because then integrated into the project. But then you can see all the config in the history, what state it's been in, etc. This is mostly, you'd mostly want to use this again as a self-service port. Probably as a self-service port. I'll show you about speaking self-service port. I'll show you this. User port. So, one thing I didn't mention, Rev needs an LDAP. You have to configure it with LDAP, otherwise there's only one and only one user, and that's added. You have to configure it with LDAP. This is the Rev self-service port. And then I'm going to wrap up if you guys have any questions. So,
desktop. I can access any templates I have available, see what resources that my user's utilizing. Right now I can use as much as I want. But if I was just a regular user, this is what I'd see. Like when I landed on this page, like if I was on a thin client, Wise actually supports Rev, and it would just bypass this, and you just log in, and you just see that those permissions, and you just start them up on your, and it supports, Spice supports 4 monitors, and it recognizes and is 4 individual monitors. I know that's a new thing, HDX. Anyway, that's Rev, and the stuff I think is really cool around cloud. Any questions? Questions, guys? Kind of dumped everything on you before you didn't fall asleep.
I got a question. Have you had any experience pushing security information to, starting up an instance, but you give it some credentials or something in a secure way? Do you have any experience with doing that?
Like with SSA? Like, do you mean like logging?
Yeah, I mean, let's say I wanted to launch an instance, but I needed to install a client cert on that instance so that it could then, essentially bootstrapping security, I need it to log in securely, let's say, to its repositories or to other web services. How would I get that credential securely onto that box without?
So like when this boots up, I'm going to show you. I'm going to reload that that XML file. I'll show you how this handles it.
Is that an exclusive CloudForms, or would this be supported?
This would be like with when you provision a system in Spacewalk. So the way Spacewalk works is it uses basically it uses SSH, just uses a different port for it, and it automatically registers the system with Spacewalk. What this does, if you're, say you're deploying an instance to Amazon, it automatically has a subscription. With this, you have to use the new subscription manager that Red Hat's come out with. It's not really crap. It's actually kind of nice. I actually like it over the old stuff. So in here we have the certificate and the template.
Okay.
And it automatically tells it that I need to talk to Catello in order to get my updates. And the same thing goes like if you were using Red Hat Enterprise Linux and talking to their subscription manager or to traditional RHN. When you provision a system with Kickstart, you just have to add those credentials into Kickstart script. That's the only way I know how to do it. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But
Sure, and I actually really kind of asking about my proxy and everything, but it's something we're starting to look at.
How do you provision? Do you? I mean,
Right now, we're
pushing
using
stuff out, or
EC2
you-
instances.
okay.
We aren't really doing the provisioning. We're kind of looking at trying to figure out how to instantiate that and get that up and running.
Because if you do, I mean, is it something where you could just have, Puppet run when you
Thank you very much.
start up and pull down anything it needs, or?
The problem is trying to make sure that everything stays secure. Our software, mostly what we're dealing with is proprietary software. We're just like, don't have to get leaked out. And then also with the credential files and stuff, we have our own credential files that we need to make sure that they remain safe. Can't be, I mean, one of the problems is if you've got 100 different instances you can start, you don't want a particular credentials file accessible to all those instances.
Yeah,
If
that's
you're using
true.
something like Puppet,
Yeah, that's something.
they'll just go, oh yeah, this is my Puppet server, great, I'm authenticating to that. But if it, accidentally deploys these credentials to, instead of to the web server, it's deploying it to the mail server, well, it wasn't supposed to do that. So how do you protect
So,
those credentials from getting to the wrong places, to the wrong host, from being accessed by the wrong
so like,
instances?
with like a spacewalk with its configuration management, like if you had, like in your case, like you could probably set up different organizations in spacewalk,
Okay.
and then that configuration would only be unique to a specific organization, to a specific customer. That's what I did at United Ouvert. So we had a central repo. I just used spacewalk to handle it. And they just had a dedicated VPN connection into it. So, and I just segmented each customer off inside spacewalk with different organizations. And the same thing goes in Catella. You could probably do a similar thing in Catella, or associate it with a different workflow inside of it when the configuration comes into it. That would solve that. In my head, anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
And then you can add those and have or you can have separate templates for each instance, and just plug in those credentials into the template file. It's just an XML file, because you know where you need to plug it in.
Right.
So we'll go to that's all I got. Does there anything else?
Rich, you think?
Yeah, cool.
Thanks.